Out on the branch line, Percy was having trouble with trucks. Faster we go, pull him along, don't let him slow. Help! Cried Percy. His driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. He went off the rails at Bulgy's Bridge. Luckily, no one was hurt. This made Cranky very cranky. So cranky that he swung his arm around. And dropped the pipes onto the tracks instead of the trucks. Whoops, said Cranky meekly. Cranky couldn't help himself. It was nice while it lasted, said Percy. But then they all heard a strange sound. Watch out for those trees, Harold, cried his pilot. My net is too heavy, wailed Harold. Harold is in trouble, Percy cried. We must try to help him. Thomas had to get to the docks before then, but the load was very heavy. So Thomas puffed as hard as he could. He pulled so hard, he broke his coupling rods. He wasn't going anywhere. The foghorn had been so loud that it made the hillside shake. No sooner was Percy out of sight when one rock fell, then another, and another. Before long, the track was blocked, and the foghorn was crushed. And not far away, Thomas was happily puffing right on time. I can't see a thing, said Thomas. And then before he could even think of anything else... But my buffers, cried Thomas. What happened to the foghorn? Then the foreman shouted, Oliver, move this rock. I'll do it, cried Jack. Jack scooped a bucket full of rock. Stop, shouted his banksman. But he didn't stop. He was too eager to help. No, shouted Isabella, but it was too late. Oh no, he cried. Oops, Jack spotted. Later, Ned was moving under the bridge. His banksman had told him to lower his crane arm. I must be careful, I must be careful, I must be careful. Then there was trouble. Ned hadn't lowered his crane arm far enough. It knocked loose the important keystones. The bridge started to crumble. Thomas puffed towards the bridge, unaware of the danger ahead. Thomas! Jack jumped in and lifted his front loader up against the bridge. He pushed with all his might. Thomas saw the flagman. His driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Cinders and ashes, cried Thomas. Jack didn't let go. Finally, Thomas's driver backed Thomas to safety. Hold on, Jack, called Kelly, and he rushed to help. Jack couldn't hold the bridge any longer. Are you all right, Jack? I think so. Thomas couldn't see there was a huge rock buried under the snow. Suddenly, his snow plough hit the rock. Bouncing buffers, exclaimed Thomas. My plough is broken. His driver tried to stop, but the broken plough hit the water tower. Cinders and ashes, exclaimed Thomas. Down the line, Trevor the traction engine had been struggling with a big cartload of hay. Crossing the tracks, the cart's wheels had broken off. Then Trevor heard a whistle. "Oh no!" Trevor cried. Donald could see the cart. "Stop!" he cried. Donald's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Luckily, no one was hurt. "Stop being pushy," Donald snapped. The next day, Donald was in a bad mood. Duck could see he was getting too close to the buffers. "Look out!" he shouted, but it was too late. But the troublesome trucks delight in mischief, and their mischief causes trouble, as poor Henry found out. Diesel pushed, and he pushed, and he pushed. But the trucks didn't move, so Diesel decided to pull the trucks instead. Heave ho, you can pull, but we won't go," sang the trucks. This made Diesel very cross. He pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled. Help! Suddenly, another building at the old mine sank into the ground. "What was that?" shouted his driver. "Double bouncing buffers!" shrieked Percy. He was so scared he lurched forward and rammed the truck. "Naughty gnomes!" cried Percy. One by one, he shunted his trucks onto the tipper's loading ramp, and the coal was unloaded. Percy was not allowed to cross the loading ramp until the tipper had been turned off. It was against the rules, but as soon as his driver and fireman left, there was trouble. Henry arrived to pick up coal. He bumped into the trucks, and the trucks bumped into Percy. Percy was pushed onto the loading ramp. "Help!" cried Percy. "I'm not a truck!" But no one heard him. Percy was hoisted up, tipped over, and brought back down again. After Percy was lowered back onto the ground, the manager was very cross. "You have caused confusion and delay," he said. "I'll have to report this to the Fat Controller." Duck gazed at it for so long, he ran into the back of Stepney. Then something big and round and red drifted straight towards them. "We're out of hot air!" shouted a voice. "Ah!" cried James. "What's happening?" Crash! Bang! Wallop went the balloon and landed right on top of James. He was so scared he let out a huge burst of steam, which blew the balloon up again. The balloon rose into the air once more. "Well done, James," called his driver. "Your hot air did the trick." But the signalman had accidentally left the point switched to the branch line. Gordon rattled through the junction. "That's strange," he exclaimed. "I'm on the branch line." "Oh no," the signalman cried. "Express trains aren't supposed to go that way." But it was too late. Gordon had already raced into the distance. The old branch line was weak and rusty. There were signs warning all the trains to go slow. But Gordon ignored the signs. "I'm an express engine, I don't go slow," he said, and he went even faster. The branch line couldn't take his weight, and the rails buckled. "Oh, help!" Gordon cried as he slid off the tracks and into a field. No one was hurt, but poor Gordon felt very undignified. "What will the Fat Controller say?" he groaned. Bill returned to his job, but he wasn't thinking about work. All he could think about was Ben's new buffers. "Ooh," said Bill. Phew! "Be careful," said Mavis, "and stop thinking about Ben's new buffers." "It's not fair," Bill huffed, and he wheeshed soot all over Mavis. "Bill," gasped Mavis. "Oops, sorry." "I might not have new buffers," he said, "but I still know how to biff a truck." "No!" Mavis cried. But it was too late. Ben puffed into the quarry with his shiny new buffers just in time to hear, "Bust my buffers!" cried Bill. "I think you have," said Ben. Percy was loading trucks at the docks. He was trying extra hard to stay clean, but the troublesome trucks were being naughty. As Percy pushed them under the coal chute, they sang out. "On, on, on," they cried. Percy found himself under the chute, and coal dust flew everywhere. "Oh, no," coughed Percy. "I'm filthy." Percy felt awful, but he knew he had to carry on. When Percy arrived at Callan Station, he was very upset. "From now on, I'm only doing work where I won't get dirty," he said. Harold the helicopter was at Callan Station picking up medical supplies. "Hello, Percy," he called. And he took off, blowing cinders and ashes everywhere. "Not again," Percy cried. Percy didn't know that earlier a leaky truck had spilled oil on the track. When he approached the chocolate factory, his driver applied the brakes, but Percy's wheels just skidded on the oily rails. "Oh no!" hooted Percy. "Yuck!" he groaned. "I've never been this dirty." He was covered from funnel to firebox in sticky, gooey chocolate. Duncan doesn't like working at the Incline Railway. He is always impatient to get back to the junction. This makes him careless and gets him into lots of trouble. Duncan didn't notice his chain was tangled in the coupling of the truck in front of him. Suddenly, he was being pulled up the track by the empty trucks. "Boots and buffers!" he cried. "It's got me!" Duncan's driver jumped clear. Rusty returned to see Duncan being pulled up the incline. "I tried to warn him," said Rusty. "He never listens," the little diesel's driver said. The chain pulling Duncan's trucks couldn't hold the weight. It suddenly snapped. "Help!" he yelled. "Glug, glug, glug," he said. "Bluggle my broiler." Duncan felt foolish and very wet. Peter Sam had steamed all through the night to bring Duncan his wagons. But as he approached the junction, a low-hanging branch knocked his whistle off. This meant he couldn't work until he got a new one. Then Duncan saw Terence ploughing a field. "He'll get the loudest and the longest whistle yet," he chortled to himself. And he blew so hard his whistle shot off like a mighty rocket and landed out of sight. Suddenly, there was a deep rumbling sound. Thomas's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "We're stuck!" And they were. An old bridge crosses one of the rivers. Some of its beams were rotten and had now been damaged by a storm. Skarloey chuffed happily along. He didn't see the broken rail until it was too late. He dangled dangerously above the water. Help! As roughly as they could, they rattled the load towards the cliff. "Look out!" cried Fergus, and he rushed forward and bumped Bill and Ben out of the way. His driver jumped to safety as the rocks began to fall, but Fergus was covered in rocks right up to his funnel. Edward couldn't wait to hear the brass band play their wonderful music. He was so excited about meeting the brass band that he didn't notice the giant crane. It was unloading a huge ship's boiler. Suddenly, the crane swung the boiler and knocked Edward right off the track. Cranky had been watching. "You useless little engines are always in the way." Poor Edward. Bertie's driver decided to take a shortcut. But it was very muddy. Bertie's wheels did not like the mud. They scooted, they skated, they slid, they slipped. "I'm stuck," he groaned. Bertie revved his engine, but his wheels spun round and round. He couldn't budge. One day, Percy puffed to the washdown. "My whistle's clogged." He tried to blow hard to clean it out, but instead blew mud all over Gordon. "Silly," huffed Gordon. Percy was trying not to laugh. Then there was trouble. The tall funnel of the old barge crashed through a pipe. James was sure he'd get covered in sludge, but he didn't. "My whistle is clogged again. Watch out, James." Dust went everywhere. "I did warn you." Duck had stopped at the crossing at the bottom of the hill. Arthur's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Squashed fruit flew everywhere. Arthur was upset. His spotless record was ruined. One day, Toby was collecting a load of flour to take to the market. But he was so busy watching the windmill sails that he forgot to look where he was going. All the flour was damaged and the miller was upset. That stormy night, the old windmill was struck by lightning. But there was trouble ahead. Trees had fallen across the line. Donald and Douglas stopped just in time. Then suddenly, there was a loud crash. The brake van had been hit by a landslide and come off the rails. They were stuck. Soon, Oliver was loaded and on his way. The snow was cold. It had frozen the points and diverted Oliver into the station sidings. "Oh, shiver my boiler," cried Oliver. His driver applied the brakes. "Is there a problem, Mr. Oliver?" "Yes, there is." "That could have been a little smoother." Oliver felt awful. Thomas steamed as fast as he could along the line. But there was trouble ahead. Some faulty points sent his trucks one way, and Thomas onto the old pier rail. The trucks were delighted. He's fallen in the water. Luckily, Thomas wasn't hurt and the fish truck stayed on the tracks. Elephant Park loomed ahead. Duncan's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. The statue flew through the air and landed in the lake. Luckily, nobody was hurt. Later, Diesel was being careless. "Not like that," snapped Fergus. "Do it right." "Don't interfere," sneered Diesel. All was well until Bulgy turned the corner. Trevor the traction engine was pulling a hay cart. "Get out of my way!" He overtook Trevor. Bulgy swerved, the hens woke up, the passengers panicked, and Bulgy's driver lost control. The hens were frightened. They flapped, they squawked. "Stop!" cried Bulgy's passengers. "We want to get off!" The passengers were covered in feathers and broken eggs. They were very cross. Then there was trouble. The balloon's flame suddenly went out. The air in the balloon cooled and the balloon started to fall. "Hold tight," the pilot called. "I want to get out," demanded Lady Hat. "Not now, dear," said Sir Topham Hatt. "The balloon's going to land in the tree," cried Skarloey. And it came down right in front of Skarloey. "There's the Fat Controller." "My hat is ruined," cried Lady Hat. "So is mine," said the Fat Controller. Further down his line, a colourful banner was strung across the bridge. Then, as Gordon steamed across the bridge, it came loose and wrapped around his firebox. He couldn't see the line ahead. Gordon tried to whoosh the banner off, but the banner wouldn't budge. "I can't see," he whistled loudly to his driver. "Stop!" Trevor the traction engine was chugging slowly along with his load of apples for the children's apple bob. Trevor heard a whistle. He was going as fast as he could, but it wasn't fast enough. The apples were all smashed. She chuffed onto the icy road. Suddenly, she was on a steep hill. Her driver applied the brakes. Elizabeth slid out of control into a deep snowdrift. Poor Elizabeth. Thomas raced into the yard. Percy was coming the other way. Thomas bumped straight into Percy and the bunting flew up in the air. Percy's trucks came off the track, and so did Thomas. "You've spilt my bunting," moaned Percy. Percy saw Bertie the bus. He took another big puff and blew. Bertie skidded all over the road. "Percy!" he cried crossly. Trevor the traction engine was taking food to the farm animals. With snow on the ground, they couldn't find any grass to eat. Percy took his biggest puff of all and blew. Trevor was so surprised his trailer bumped into a pile of logs. A log fell off and rolled down the hill. Snow stuck to the log. It turned into a snowball. The snowball got bigger and bigger. Percy was enjoying himself until he saw the snowball. "Oh no!" cried Percy. Luckily, no one was hurt, but his driver was cross. But Diesel was soon up to his old tricks. First, he shunted Thomas under the hopper. "Cinders and ashes," spluttered Thomas. Soon Diesel was showing off. "I'm the fastest engine in the world," he boasted. "Look at me go." Suddenly, Diesel's engine coughed. Then it started to splutter. Black, smelly smoke billowed from his exhaust. "I feel sick," wailed Diesel. Mavis started billowing smoke too. "So do I," she groaned. The quarry manager was upset. "It's the new fuel," he cried. "Water must have leaked into the tanks." Soon, all the other Diesels had broken down. Harry, Bert, even Salty had ground to a halt. The difficult bend came nearer and nearer. Thomas was supposed to slow down, but he wanted to get past the bend quickly. So Thomas went faster and faster. The carriages rattled and shook. "Soon be over," Thomas said to himself. And it soon was. Luckily, no one was hurt. But Thomas felt sadder than ever. "Runaway trucks are coming," he cried. "You must change the points." The signalman quickly changed the points. The troublesome trucks hurtled into a siding. They biffed and bashed the buffers. But the station was safe. The moment Cranky had finished, Percy took off. He hadn't waited for the pipes to be tied down. Percy rounded the bend. The pipes slipped and fell all over the track. But Percy puffed on. Percy charged down Gordon's Hill. He didn't see Gordon and the express until it was too late. The brake van passed Gordon, but the tar wagons didn't. Thomas pulled to a slow, sad stop by a signal box. And his driver went for help. It snowed and snowed. Thomas felt very cold and twice as miserable. Then, when Emily arrived at the mill, the trucks were more troublesome than ever. "Emily the late engine, Emily the late engine," they sang. This made Emily very cross, and she biffed them very hard. "Oh no," they cried, and splashed into the duck pond. Emily was covered in a floury mess. There were lots of people he could show off to. "Watch how smoothly I can go." puffed Gordon. Gordon was so busy showing off, he didn't see how icy the track was. Gordon slid right through the station and into a siding. Everyone watched as he puffed into a big pile of snow. Yuck! Coughed Gordon. Luckily, no one was hurt. That afternoon, Thomas and Percy arrived at the quarry. But as the stone was loaded onto the trucks, a big cloud of stone whooshed down and landed right on top of Thomas. Yuck! Coughed Thomas. The engines tried to find the sunniest spot in the coal yard. So James backed up. Suddenly he bumped into a truck. The truck rolled into a lever. Then there was a whooshing sound. Oh no! James puffed. Coal poured out everywhere. It poured onto the tracks and all over Gordon, James and Emily. They weren't gleaming and shiny anymore. Just then, Gordon blew to clean his funnel. Coal dust shot into the air. It covered the Fat Controller and the railway inspector. Sorry. Salty was at the bottom of the hill. He was waiting for a signal. He didn't know Thomas was coming down the hill. Thomas was out of control. Thomas braked as hard as he could, but the fish trucks were too heavy. Oops, said Thomas. Sorry. Salty was covered in fish. Never mind me, Artie, said Salty. The smell reminds me of the sea. Thomas was ready to go. But the shunters hadn't released the brakes on the trucks. Thomas pulled as hard as he could, but the trucks wouldn't move. I have to hurry, puffed Thomas. He heaved, he huffed, and he puffed, and at last, the coupling broke. Thomas shot forward, cocoa powder flew everywhere. Now I'll never get to take the children.